case is closed, but some never rest. When silence screams, we listen. This is dead and wrong.
Welcome back. I'm Liz.
And I'm Sam.
And this is Dead and Wrong, your weekly podcast for all things dead. People, animals, ghosts. If it's dead, we're gonna cover it.
Eventually. And today we get to do our first case update.
Indeed, we do. Sam actually pointed this out to me yesterday, and I jumped right on it.
But my
So,
sister pointed it out to me, so I just forwarded it to you.
so our ghost host pointed out to Sam, and then Sam pointed it out to me.
Yes.
So, on episode 7, we covered the disappearance and murder of Kristen Smart in 1996, a student from Cal Poly. She was announced officially dead in 2002, and her killer, Paul Flores, was sentenced in 2022. They never found her body, but this was a good case of police work that never stopped. And apparently, they have still not stopped because, for a reason not yet given to the public, they did a soil analysis of his mother's house, Susan Flores. This test indicated there may have been remains on the property. They tore through her yard already, but they have not located her body. That being said, they are not fully done with this and still have hope that they will be able to recover Kristen's body. We will be keeping up on this, and on the chance that they are able to locate her body, we will push out another update. And apparently, the last part of this is Susan is now potentially looking at felony charges,
As she should.
which she should. And I did this in episode 7, and I'm going to do it again. Shout out to the San Luis Obispo Police Department because they are fantastic.
They get the job done.
They do. But now that that update is done and over with, let's get started on this week's episode. Dead and Wrong presents episode 12, The Skeletons in the Closet of John Damon, 1958. So, it is September 27th, 1958 in Omaha, Nebraska. Unbeknownst to the community around them, 16-year-old William Leslie Arnold, who went by his middle name Leslie, and that is how we will refer to him, and his mother, Opal, are in the midst of a heated argument that has been going on for over an hour. You see, Opal was not a fan of her son's girlfriend, who constantly had him on the phone chatting with her, which led to tying up the only line that the family had. With Leslie refusing to back down over this ordeal, Opal was left with no other option and forbade him from using the family car that evening, which he wanted to use in order to take his girlfriend on a date to the drive-in movie theater. And maybe it was the apparent verbal abuse he'd faced throughout his childhood from both his mother and father, or maybe it was something more. But something inside Leslie went dark after this. As the argument ended, Leslie walked away from his mother, went up to his parents' room, got into the closet, and pulled out his father's .22 caliber semi-automatic Remington rifle. With deadly intent in his eyes, he pointed the rifle at his mother, making it clear that she either allowed him to use the car or he would pull the trigger. But what mother would believe her 16-year-old son would do such a horrible thing? So she laughed. And as she laughed, Leslie pulled the trigger, shooting his mother point blank, and then continued to shoot her 5 more times.
And this is the one you chose to read on Mother's Day? Thanks.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Oops. So Leslie would have shot his mother even more, but he was stopped as his father, Bill, returned home from the grocery store and walked into the kitchen to find his wife dead and the gun in his son's hand. Bill knew right away what happened and immediately lunged for his son, but he wasn't quick enough, and Leslie shot him too, 6 times total, just like his mother. Let me make it clear. You don't just murder someone in cold blood and move on like anything happened, especially when that someone is a parent or a sibling. There is something very, very, very disturbingly wrong with you if you can do something like that and then just go on a date with your high school girlfriend claiming your parents decided to go out of town suddenly.
Oh, so he just had a whole like made up plan going.
Oh yeah, he knew what he was going to do. Well, Leslie did not bat a single thin eyelash at the fact that he just murdered his parents with a rifle over something as trivial as not being able to use the family car. In fact, he took the time to drag both of his parents' body into the basement, clean up the mess, go to his neighbor's house to see if they could watch his 13-year-old brother for the night, who, thank God, was not at the house.
Okay.
The neighbors had to go pick him up and then kept him for the night. So Leslie then uses the family's 1957 Mercury to pick up his girlfriend and her brother, and then goes to a double feature movie at the drive-in. And once this cute little date night with his girlfriend is over, and his brother is comfortably at the neighbor's house, Leslie goes back to his house, drags his parents' bodies from the basement to the backyard, and proceeds to bury both of their bodies beneath his mother's lilac bushes.
Jesus.
Yeah. And while he cleaned up this brutal murder scene of his parents, there were some pieces of evidence still left behind, such as the blood-stained rugs. So he grabbed those rugs, got into the car again, and tossed those rugs into the Papio Creek before returning home and going to bed.
Yo.
And he's a sociopath
Oh, of
because
course.
he didn't stop there. The following Monday, he drove to his father's shop and opened it up like it was a normal day. Some people found this odd and approached him and was curious to why he wasn't in school, so he just told everyone his parents had gone out of state for a sudden trip and he was left in charge to keep things running. He mowed the lawn every Saturday, cared for his brother, did his homework on the kitchen table, you know, the very room he shot and killed his parents, and then waved and smiled at all of his neighbors as they passed by. Literally just lived his life like his parents were not buried in the backyard. And
He's a psychopath.
apparently, he only missed 2 days of schools during this. So he still managed to go to school too.
That's crazy.
And this behavior, this like living life without his parents, lasted 2 weeks. You see, his parents suddenly going out of town and leaving behind their 13-year-old and 16-year-old sons, that didn't really sit right with some people within the community. Like they could sense something was off. And thankfully, someone went to the police about this. So the police did their due diligence and went to the family home, which is 6477 Poppleton Avenue, because we know that Sam loves to look up houses, so she's probably going to look up this one, and was met at the door by Leslie. She's highlighting it right now.
Leave me alone.
So the officers on scene asked Leslie about his parents, and right then and there, without tears, without any kind of rage, Leslie confessed. With a chilling, calm composure, he tells the officers he shot and killed his parents and buried their bodies in the back under the lilac bushes. Leslie was arrested. Detectives were called in, and Leslie led both the officers and the detectives right to the spot where he buried the bodies. Leslie was charged as an adult with 2 counts of second-degree murder, pleaded guilty, was found guilty, and was sentenced to life in prison. And that is the murder of Opal and Bill Arnold. I mean, it's a really crazy
But
story, isn't it?
it is a crazy story.
What do you mean, but?
Is that it?
Yeah.
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
If you scroll down to the next page.
I'm doing house hunting.
Oh, well, when you get back on, scroll down to the next page. So, yeah, no, this isn't over. It gets crazier,
Jeez.
which I'm sure if you've noticed, that's kind of my thing. I like cases that just keep going, keep giving. So,
It just keeps.
with the murder and Leslie spending the rest of his life in prison, everyone was finally able to settle down and ask, why? Why the hell did this 16-year-old kid suddenly decide to kill his parents? You see, to the community they lived in, everyone thought Leslie was a good kid. He was a junior at Central High School. All of his teachers described him as being quiet, polite, well behaved, and attentive in class. He got mainly B's, enjoyed his science classes the most, and already had plans in place for the future. He knew he wanted to go to college. He was very active within his school. He participated in ROTC, track, and band. And it's because of all of this, like, people wanted to know, like, what made him snap. Because this was not, what he did was not the kid they knew. Some people wanted to know, had he been some kind of psychopath just waiting for the right buttons to be pushed? Was his mother, who openly seemed to favor his little brother over him and subjected him to years of verbal abuse, just too much, and so he finally snapped? There were so many internal questions that the local police had, and it just didn't make sense to them. But they never got their answers, and it's not because he refused to talk or because he passed away in prison. It was because in 1967, almost 9 years after he was sentenced, he escaped from Nebraska State Penitentiary and technically has never been located yet.
What? That is crazy.
And he got, if anybody's wondering, he got out with the help of a parolee who, ended up back in prison. So he was and is currently considered a fugitive, though they believe they know where he had been hiding the whole time. Needless to say, today, like 2026, he's not alive.
I mean, in a
So,
wheelchair,
true.
just scrolling around.
So, the police, along with the help of the FBI, looked into many leads throughout the years. The original assumption was that Leslie had ended up in Brazil. A fellow inmate Leslie knew admitted he'd spoken to Leslie about going to Brazil. And then in 2017, a digitalized immigration card from 1968 showed up. The card gave Leslie's full name, his correct date of birth, the location of his birth. And so that's why they thought he was in Brazil. It's unknown, really, if the FBI actually looked into this, or so, like, if this was Leslie or someone else using his information. Obviously, if one inmate had escaped, I wouldn't be surprised if another inmate escaped.
Yeah.
And then used his information. There wasn't a whole lot on that, but for whatever reason, whoever filled out that card ended up not being Leslie. But here is what they were able to confirm throughout everything. So Leslie, along with another inmate, James Harden, made it to Omaha. They caught a bus to Chicago, and then they parted ways. A year after this, James was caught and put back in jail, but Leslie was still on the run. Then, in 2020, United States Marshal Matthew Westover took over the whole entire case. And he was a marshal stationed in Omaha, Nebraska, so that's how he got a hold of it. He learned about Leslie as a good student, but also as a kid who had a bad relationship with his mother. Apparently, he was even a good inmate in prison, before the whole escaping thing. They said he followed all of the rules and was actually on his way for being qualified for early release. So even though he had life in prison, he was doing such a good job that they're like, crap, maybe it was like a one-time thing. They said he dedicated himself to music in the prison, which is funny because it was the window in the music room that he literally escaped from.
That's why he dedicated himself.
Apparently, this parolee that had helped them escape threw hacksaws over the fence, and then they were able to sneak the hacksaws in and then saw through the bars and escape through the window.
Interesting.
Now, as I'm sure we've all noticed because I've covered multiple cases in the mid 1900s, the main difference between 2020 and 1958 is DNA.
DNA.
Because, back then DNA wasn't really a thing. Obviously, nowadays it is. So Matthew, with the case in hand and an understanding of everything that had happened, took a 5-hour drive across the border of Nebraska to locate and meet with Leslie's little brother, James. Thankfully, like I said, he hadn't been home when the murders occurred, but when they asked him about it, he was more than happy to provide a DNA sample because he 100% blamed his brother.
Oh, of course.
No loving feelings towards his brother after taking the parents away. So they submitted James' DNA into an ancestry site but they didn't get anything to return that proved useful to their investigation. Then, 2 years later, in 2022, the DNA sample triggered a match. So Matthew
Mm.
got an alert that the DNA sample matched with another sample that had enough similarities that it had to be a close relative. So, not cousins, so siblings, like immediate family lines,
Or a
or a
child.
child. And just as important as the DNA sample match was the email that came with it. This email read, "Hey, I'm trying to find out more information about my father. He was an orphan from Chicago. You know, the last
Ah.
known spot Leslie was confirmed at." The son, whose identity to this day is still restricted, they didn't share his name at all. We're just going to call him William. So William did not know that the person he emailed was a U.S. Marshal. He had just assumed it was a family member who uploaded the DNA, as Matthew had used James' information in it and had James' permission to do it. William
Okay.
told Matthew he just wanted to know more about his dad. His dad, who he knew as John Damon, died in 2010. Obviously, they didn't really have a lot of time together, so he just wanted to know more. Now, there was some worry that the death in 2010 was fake, so Matthew looked into it more, but he was able to confirm that John Damon passed away through his death certificate. So he was like, yep, is dead. And through that, and after talking with William, they basically confirmed that John Damon was Leslie Arnold.
We just completely stole an identity.
And all this kind of led to the answers of how Leslie escaped. So apparently, Leslie changed his name to John Damon a few months after he escaped from prison. He got a job at a restaurant in Chicago and then met his wife and eventually had 4 kids. They moved all over the world: Cincinnati, Miami, and Los Angeles before the two divorced in 1978.
Did you just say he moved all over the world and you said Cincinnati,
All
Miami,
over
and
the
Los Angeles?
United
That's just
States.
the
I meant
US.
United States.
There you go.
My bad. So, well, here we go. Leslie moved to New Zealand
Okay, now he's over the world.
in the 1990s and then a few years later moved to Australia. And this is basically where he stayed until he passed away. Matthew spoke with his other kids and his second wife, who were completely shocked to find out that Leslie had done this, because apparently he was a good father, like phenomenal. He was a provider, raised his kids to be great people. From the sounds of it, he became the parent that his parents weren't.
I mean, he could have done that without
True.
killing them.
But that is the full case of the skeleton in the closet of John Damon, aka William Leslie Arnold.
So he was angry at his parents because he was always on the phone. His mom wouldn't let him go on a date or use the car, so he killed her, buried her in the background.
Backyard.
Nice people caught on and told the police. He went to jail. He escaped jail, got a new name, married someone, had 4 kids, became a great father,
Married
got
someone,
divorced, left to New Zealand.
divorced, remarried.
Oh,
Yeah, he had
remarried.
2 wives.
Okay. Left to New Zealand, Australia, ended up becoming a great person. I mean, seriously, he could have done it all without killing his
Could
parents.
have.
Kids have to realize once you turn 18 and you're out of high school, you can go wherever you
You can
want.
do whatever you want.
Go do whatever you want. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with your parents. Don't have to agree with them all the time, but you still gotta respect them to a point. I will say that there are some really, really, really bad ones out there, but most teens just don't like what their parents say in general.
So, yeah, it was really interesting to read, because they're like, I was reading it and it's like, yep, he was sentenced, he pled guilty, no issues. I'm like, oh sweet, then then he escaped, never found again. What the hell?
He's
Yeah.
smart. Gotta give it to him.
But you can be smart and be a psychopath at the same time. Plenty of those
Oh,
guys out there.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Anyways, anything else?
yes and
You,
no.
you, you.
Yes and no. You get to pick out the next episode. Would you like another episode of children killers, or would you like a cult killing?
Ooh, cold.
Okay. I will
Yes.
say there is the mention of a death of one kid, but it's not like the primary focus
Okay, we can do it.
to our that.
And I have one of mine ready, so we can record that and put it out too for everybody.
We are actually
Yay! I
gonna get
did
ahead
it.
of the game for once.
Hopefully. We'll get there. But, anyways, we have socials up and running. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and listen to us on Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Please remember to comment and vote, as this will help us grow our audience. And with that, we will see you next week for another great episode full of things dead.
Dead.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.